2024 draft haul is complete from GM Mickey Loomis and the New Orleans Saints. There's a new quarterback also down there in New Orleans. Keith, your initial thoughts of Mickey Loomis's haul here in 2024?
Yeah, I would say more of the same, right? I thought it was okay, and I'm gonna start at the very top. I think they addressed the positional need, and it became an instant need, right? We talking about they moved up to get Trevor Penning, was that 2 years ago? That simply has just not worked out, right? It was injury and then just a combination of bad play to where you may not even feel comfortable with putting him on the football field, but then you move on and you look at it and insert Talise Fuaga to that. I think they needed 2 offensive tackles, right? Because the situation with Ryan Ramczyk on the other side with the injury thing, and it's been kind of weird down there in New Orleans as far as it happened with Ryan Ramczyk, it happened with Michael Thomas, right? So there's something that's starting to kind of come back and, I guess hurt them, right? And so they had 2 offensive tackle needs, I feel like, and they was only able to address one of them. So I'm going to look at it, and then I'm going to go transition to the second round pick. Kool-aid McKinstry, I really like that one, Ryan Fowler.
I do too. First team All-American, you know what you're going to get in a guy who can play man. He's got extremely fluid hips. He's someone in this class, in the corner class, to where this is not the corner class we had last year, right, in 2023, the fundamental talent. But you get him in New Orleans where there's ball players everywhere in that secondary. Even a guy like Alontae Taylor that I feel like is underrated, absolutely. He's had an excellent start to his career in New Orleans. I love Kool-Aid's game. I know you did his report. A lot of good things to say about Kool-Aid. You know what you're going to get as far as in his game, close to the line of scrimmage, end zone, work downhill. I talked about his hips, work up the speed, stay hip to hip with guys. Talk to us a little bit more about what Kool-Aid's going to offer in that New Orleans secondary, a team I know you're very familiar with.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about Marshawn Lattimore on one side. You talked already about Alontae Taylor, right? The young guy who's really turning it on. And then I think Kool-Aid has the opportunity, because he is such a physical tackler, he can play nickel or he can play outside. So he's making the back end of that defense very versatile. And then you add in a legend like Tyrann Mathieu, right? They're going to be very multiple in what they can do. I think this is a team that wants to line up and play man across the board. You get a Kool-Aid McKinstry, you can line up and play man across the board.
Absolutely. A guy, I want to jump back over to day 3 before we get into quarterback Spencer Rattler. Christian Boyd from Northern Iowa. I'm not sure there's a player in the SCS level that stood out to me more in this process. The guy visited with more than half the league in his pre-draft visits. He had a ton of attention. Now he goes to New Orleans to where it's a veteran group up front. They got to get better along the front. Obviously, they add Brian Brzee last year as that high first-round pick out of Clemson. Christian Boyd, I think, is going to challenge for snaps immediately. We saw him at Shrine. What scouts want to see from these lower-level kids? Can you dominate at the lower level and then come to a Senior Bowl or come to a Shrine and see what you do with a Power 5 talent? And Christian Boyd was flat-out dominant. Now it's about doing it in a New Orleans Saints uniform and being a potential rotational guy along the interior at 1 Tech and 3 Tech. But let's transition. Let's get to the offense, a name that we expected to go much earlier, maybe to a New York Giants or a Las Vegas Raiders. Both those teams did not add quarterbacks in this draft. Spencer Rattler in New Orleans. Do you like the fit? Do you not like the fit?
I like it. I like it. I like it. What they did was they just put the hot seat on Derek Carr, and they gave themselves an opportunity to be able to move on from Derek Carr without using high-level draft capital. Spencer Rattler, I had a high 3rd, late 2nd round grade on him. He didn't go into the 5th. They snatched him up, and this is a guy that's played a lot of football going all the way back to high school. Unfortunately, in my opinion, he wasn't able to shake kind of some of the misnomer about him, right? And nobody talked about the development of him throughout this draft process. And we seen him at the Senior Bowl, right? We know what happened at South Carolina. So I think he's in and ready. I watched the draft video when he got drafted, Ryan Fowler, and this looked like a guy that was focused, right? He felt like he was a little bit slept on, and he felt like he's motivated. So I think it's Derek Carr's football team, right? But what they did was General Manager Mickey Loomis, they put themselves in position to say, you know what? We feel like we have pieces, right? We have a Alvin Kamara, we have a Chris Olave. So we're not going to go to waste with this if Derek Carr does not get on board and play better football. And I think Spencer Rattler has the right type of pedigree to step in and give the New Orleans Saints significant snaps, and then moving forward, they can put themselves in a situation to potentially have a franchise quarterback.
And it's crazy to say, because you're right, it is Derek Carr's football team, but Spencer Rattler remains 1 snap away. And sometimes that's all it takes. Now, I'm not saying that Spencer Rattler right away there's going to be a competition in camp or anything like that, but we've seen him play at Oklahoma, and it helped him to go to South Carolina, reel it back just a little bit as a former 5-star recruit, Mr. Everything, obviously. And now he goes to New Orleans, and he's going to get an opportunity to also learn alongside Derek Carr. So I love the fit. I'm right alongside with you. Every year we look at the top of the boards, first-round quarterbacks, and expect all to them to just become these superstar talents. You see guys start every year across the league, the Trace McSorleys, the Taylor Heinekes, the Josh Dobbs. There were people in Cincinnati last year calling for Jake Browning over Joe Burrow. What are we doing? What are we doing here, right? So Spencer Rattler in New Orleans, I'm right there with you, Keith. I love the fit. Overall, for this New Orleans Saints draft class, what's your grade?
Last year, I gave them a C, right? And Saints fans were really angry with me. I think they'll be a little bit happier with me, and I'm going to give them a B minus. And the reason is this: they didn't have that many draft picks, but I put this much stock into that Spencer Rattler pick, right? I think without the Spencer Rattler pick, they're probably back in that C range, to be completely honest. But you add Spencer Rattler and your opportunity for wiggle room, right, and being able to draft and develop a quarterback with his type of arm talent, then I have to give you credit, because we talked about the New York Giants. We talked about the Las Vegas Raiders, both teams that continually passed up on Spencer Rattler. The New Orleans Saints have him. The New Orleans Saints can draft him. They can develop him, and they can make him their franchise quarterback if he shows he can play well.